This is how I would learn to play FIFA if I could start over. For context, I've been playing since Ultimate Team started in 2009. I was top 200 in the Elite Division in FC 24, and I'm just starting to get involved in the pro scene right now. But getting to this point hasn't been easy, and knowing what I know now, I would go about things completely different. So these are 10 things I would do differently if I started playing FIFA today. The first thing I wish I knew is don't waste time on stupid mechanics. I wasted so much time in higher divisions trying to learn skill moves because I thought they looked cool, and they kind of did, but I didn't win any more games because of them. So this is a list of stupid mechanics everyone will tell you you need to know, but they don't make a difference at all. Skill moves only focus on the step over, L1 speed boost, advanced step over, and flare nutmeg cancel. Everything else doesn't work and is a waste of time. Green timing shots. Unless you're in the Elite Division, I can guarantee the reason you're not losing games isn't because you don't green time your shots, it's because you're not taking the right ones. And lastly, precision versus assisted. Unless you're in the Elite Division or trying to play pro, because it's mandatory for pro players to use precision, just stick to assisted shooting. It doesn't make that big of a difference, and if you don't know how to use precision, you're gonna miss every time. But the second thing I wish I had known earlier was an in-depth understanding of the game. Every time you play a game, there are 3 things you should think about: mechanics, theory, and the meta. Mechanics will always matter, and those are the things I mentioned before, along with left stick dribbling, player control, and sending players on runs. Theory is the mind game that goes on between you and your opponent. And lastly, the most important one will always be the meta. So as soon as you start a game, you should try to figure out where you have the advantage. For example, if you're better mechanically, you should play extremely fast and not worry about the other two. But say your opponent is better mechanically and theoretically, but he can't stop the meta, then you should double down on the meta if you actually want to win the game. But now the third thing I would do differently is set up a good playing environment. The biggest mistake I made from 2010 to 2018 is I played on a huge TV with a shitty Xbox and horrible internet connection. But if you actually want to get good at the game, there are 3 things you need that I did not have. The first is a next-gen console. Gameplay is so different on old gen, it actually feels like a different game. The second thing you need is a monitor. It doesn't have to be expensive, it just has to be something where you can see everything going on the field, because you can't play on a TV. You will miss too much and your reactions will be too slow. But the last thing you need is also the most important: good internet connection. There are a number of different factors you need to take into account while playing, but if you have bad internet connections, your players will move slower and your reactions will be delayed, meaning you will lose significantly more. But the next tip is how you actually figure out what you need to get better at, and that's by watching your gameplay. After you play a really intense game against someone who is as good or better than you, record it and watch it back. But don't just watch it randomly. After I play an intense game, I will sit down and take notes on what I did right, what I did wrong, how I scored, and how I got scored against, as well as anything else that sticks out, allowing me to connect back to other games to see if I made similar mistakes or if there are other things that I need to work on. But I don't just watch my gameplay, I watch my opponent's as well, because if he's doing something that is really good, I want to figure out how he did it so I can do it myself against other players. But now the 5th thing I wish I knew before is a higher level concept that has helped me win so many more games: recognizing specific patterns. Just like chess, you will find yourself in a similar situation time and time again, and it's essentially a puzzle. Take this position for example. Every time I overlap with my right back, the winger is in this area, and my other 2 attackers are over here. But if I can recognize this pattern in game, all I have to do is look at my opponent's defenders and I can score every time. If his defender is not stepping towards the winger, then all I have to do is recognize that, play the winger short, and I'll score. But if I'm in the same pattern and his defender is cutting off the winger, then I'll recognize that and be able to score a different way. But the only reason I know that is because I've been in this position so many times. So as you're watching your own gameplay and playing in the moment, you should be trying to identify patterns and how to use them to your advantage. But the next thing I wish I learned sooner is gonna sound so stupid, but you have to know how you score. Every really good player has between 3 and 5 ways of scoring, and that's all they focus on. For example, my big 4 are taking the ball down the line and passing it back into a finesse shot, taking on the center backs with the L1 speed boost, taking it down the line, fake cutting back and sweating it, and lastly sending a player on a through ball and doinking it over the top. Essentially, I'm trying to overload my opponent because he doesn't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm also trying to figure out what are his weaknesses and how I can score. But I don't always use all of them in game, I use whatever works. So if finesse shots are the first thing I try and that's what's working, I'm gonna stick to that. But if it doesn't, I'm gonna keep cycling through my methods until I find something that does. So what you should do is start analyzing exactly how you like to score, how other people like to score, and come up with a list of ways that you like to score. But the 7th thing I wish I I knew sooner is that custom tactics are only as good as you are with them. I swear, every content creator, and I've been at fault of this as well, will tell you these are the best custom tactics that you have to use. But what they don't tell you is that by blindly putting on some random player's tactics without telling you how to actually use them will not win you more games. It'll actually make you worse. Your players will do things and you'll have no idea what's going on. So if you want to use custom tactics, you have to try them out and learn how to use them. So go back to what I mentioned before and figure out how you like to score, and then find tactics that complement those methods. If you like to cut in finesse shot, run a formation with 2 wingers that have finesse shot plus. But if you're worse at defending and can still attack with numbers back, run a 5-back. You just need to identify what you're good at before you figure out the tactics, because if you just randomly use tactics, you're not going to win any more games. The 8th tip I wish I learned sooner is you have to use the right players. When I started playing FIFA, I would always choose the best players, but I wouldn't win any more games. But then I realized I'm not using the players correctly. But it didn't just take me figuring out what players I like to use to start winning games. I had to go back to the past 2 steps and figure out how I like to score and what tactics work best for me. If I like to dribble down the line on the right side, cut in and take a finesse shot, I need to use someone fast with rapid plus and someone with finesse shot plus on the inside. So if you're trying to get better, the first thing you need to do is acknowledge how you want to play, then figure out the tactics that complement that style of play, and then figure out the players that will fit those tactics. The 9th thing I wish I knew is you have to play the meta and don't be afraid to lean into it. Everyone is going to tell you, oh, you're just using the meta, or oh, you're not good enough to win without it. But there's a difference between only abusing the meta and strategically using it to your advantage. Right now, the kickoff glitch is very OP, and you're telling me that I shouldn't do the kickoff glitch when I could start off every game with a 1-0 lead? That's crazy. It's not wrong to take advantage of an easy way to score. It's only wrong if that's the only way you know how to score. If you watch any high-level game, almost every player is doing all they can to get into a position to abuse the meta. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what the meta is, and the best way to do that is by watching streamers and short-form videos. After you know the meta, the next thing is to figure out how to implement it into your gameplay. Right now, power shots and finesse shots are very OP, but I don't like to do power shots, so I double down on finesse shots as much as possible. And the last thing I wish I understood was, despite high-level gameplay being very different, the bar is so low. If you actually want to get better at the game and eventually go 15-0, you can. The majority of people who play this game aren't even thinking while they're playing. They just sit there and listen to a podcast or music and zone out. So if you actually lock in and focus on your gameplay, you can go from Div 6 to Elite in just 1 year. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you actually want to get better at FC25, click here and make sure to subscribe. Peace.